Now we're about to just skim the surface on doing parallax design. I'm going to share with you some of my techniques. We'll go into full-blown parallax development in subsequent videos, but I just want you to again walk before you can run. Now again, since we have that copy as draft, I'm going to pick copy as draft. It's going to make a new page, and we'll just call this version 2 parallax and publish that. Now, similar to what we did in previous videos, let's work smart. What I mean by that is we're going to have different images in different text blocks, etc., etc. But before we do that, let's set up these images and text blocks the right way. So based on these choices, I'm going to hit the edit, and I'm simply going to change this text to white. Now, here's what I want to caution you about. If you change it to white, okay, unless you go into text mode, you really can't see the white. So a little trick here is if you temporarily change it to an off color, or of course you can select it as well. You can do Command A, select all. But if it's white on white, obviously you can't see it. But you can see it if in fact you go to text, and you can make your changes from there. So we'll just keep it white as is and save the changes and update this. So therefore, if I go into view page or preview changes, I'm now going to see a better looking page. Pink, learn, earn. Now, of course, through CSS3 and everything, I can put drop shadows on that, etc., etc. Now, before we go any further, I do want to make some further changes to this. So I'm going to go back to edit my row. And if you recall in a previous video, inside of our background, we said no parallax. Well, in this particular case, we do want to have a parallax scroll that's vertical parallax on scroll. Okay, now in this particular case, it's going to ask us for our background image for this. So we're no longer going to use the background image that we had set up in our design options, so I'm going to get rid of that. So under background, under parallax scroll, we're going to collect this image right here, and I'm going to pick the same image as before and pick set image. Now keep in mind it's inside the text box, and the text box has been set up the way that we want it to be. Now the parallax speed, we're going to keep this by default. We're going to keep the width by default, move with content, etc., etc. But here's what we do want to do. I want this to be edge to edge, so I don't want to have any margin on the top and no margin on the bottom. So I want this to basically be the container to be edge to edge, top and bottom, and save the changes and update the page. So if I go to preview this, again, you can't see this because it's white. And if that's a little confusing for you, well, change it to an off color white so you can see it temporarily. Or I can go back to classic mode and I can see exactly, and I can make whatever changes I want from here. Now, that changes to the text box. You have to do that over here. Okay, so I'm going to update that, which I guess I already did, my mistake on that, and hit preview changes. Okay. Now, there's nothing to scroll to because there's no second element in here. So the simplest way to do this is to take this element and click right here, and we're going to duplicate that. And we're going to duplicate that. So now we have 3. And update. Now, of course, it's going to say the same exact thing, but because I have 3 and now I can scroll. So with parallax, the height of your page has to be bigger than the width than the height of your computer, otherwise you can't scroll anyplace. Hopefully that makes logical sense to you. You can't scroll to something that's smaller than your scroll bar capabilities. It has to be larger than your scroll bar capabilities. So I'm going to hit preview changes. And now if I scroll down, I'll get a very nice parallax. And again, I don't have spacing between because I set my margin space to 0. Now keep in mind, do not confuse nothing with 0. Nothing is default. So depending on the browser, it can automatically have default set into it, or the application that you're using. Do not confuse nothing, blank dialog box or blank tab, with 0. 0 is a value, just like 1's a value or 2's a value. The only exception to that is this. If you have nothing in your bank account or 0 in your bank account, in that particular case, it is the same thing. All right, so let's go back to this. Now here, I want to change that to something else. I'm going to select the text, And right now in my text, and if I go to my here, well, actually I just do a select all if I want. But I think it's easier to go here. This way I can physically see it. So I'm going to select this. I'm going to change that to create design, edit, publish, which is one of my advertising catchphrases from back in the day. And save the changes. Now, I also want to swap out the photo for another photo, so that needs to be done inside the row itself. So I select the row. Now, keep in mind we duplicated this, so there's little work ahead of us. If I had built everything from scratch, I'm creating more work for myself. So under background, we're going to get rid of this background image, and we're going to pull in a new background image. So let's pull in this background image and set the image. And save the changes. And we can update the changes. So let's go down here again to this text block. And think, let's change it to think WordPress. Let's save the changes. Let's go back to our text block again. And let's simply bring in a different background image. Let's get rid of that background image, hit the plus. See how simple this is? Once you understand how it thinks, it's really child's play. And what happens with Visual Composer, it makes it so incredibly simple for duplicating what you already have so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So get to know these little nuances, and it will save you a lot of brain damage. I like that word brain damage, by the way. So if I preview the images, you now have a really cool looking Parallax website. Think, learn, earn, create, design, edit, publish, think WordPress. Now, since that is on, I would probably opt for making this yellow. So how can I fix that? Well, right from here, I can go to Edit Visual Composer, right on the screen. And this is a good use of this on the screen. So if I scroll down here, well, this is not behaving correctly. I think the background images in here are acting kind of wonky. All right, so let's go back to our backend editor and make changes. I think it was too much information for it to bring up there. So let's just go back to our third text block. And since we're going to make this yellow, we can go right back to Visual, just do a select all, and we're just going to change this to a yellow color because, of course, yellow is the opposite of blue, for those of you that didn't know that. So therefore, yellow is a good contrast. So if I update the changes and come back here to preview changes, so I have Think, Learn, Earn, I have Create, Design, Edit, Publish, and I have Think WordPress. Pretty cool stuff. I'd probably put a drop shadow on that because we'll do that in a subsequent video because it's still not it's not contrasting enough with the white. But I have accomplished the fact that I want to put in one more, so I'm going to close out of that. Let's see, these are both the same, so I'm going to close out of that window. Let's duplicate this last one. So let's duplicate the row. Again, we're not duplicating the text, we're duplicating the row. And let's go and make a change to that. And let's put dashboard video training. PSA announcement for Think, Learn, Earn. And let's just go with white again. So I'm going to change the color to white. I'm going to save the changes. I'm going to come up here to my Parallax image, background, kill, import, and let's do this one. And save the changes. Update this. Go to preview. Now, it's looking much better, but yet, what does it all mean? Because there's no buy button, there's no call to action. I mean, it's nice looking. Now, this particular image doesn't support the resolution. Now, notice I got artifacts and pixelization, so I would definitely Here's a very important step when we work with images. No image should be bigger than 72 dots per inch. That's all the screen resolution you can get. So for those of you out there that are saying, well, I need 600 dpi, well, that's for print publication. So based on the width, you basically set up the width of your design, and it should be no bigger depth than 72 dots per inch. Now, in our next video, we're going to get into something really cool using something called Fancy Text, which is one of my favorite VC add-on plugins for Visual Composer. You're going to have a lot of fun with this, so stay tuned.